When you're using the AI, which has all of this history and can recommend you, basically putting a value into that case and say, if you do this right, this case, based on historical information, should be $145,000 settlement. So you know what your target is to go after. Like in pre-lit, everybody has a target. I want to get policy because the injuries are much higher, the policy is low, so the gut feeling is pretty okay.
Last year he spoke, and once again, this is somebody that I wish that I knew a long time ago, because the people that he has the connections with and his history as a 3-time award-winning author of 3 different books. Please put your hands together for Hamid Kohan.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It was almost like I was here yesterday. So last year we were here talking about how to scale your law practice. And last year was all about virtual staffing, virtual services, virtual marketing, client generation, and so forth. So the AI moved so quickly that I had to sort of spin into the AI side of how to scale your law firm. But for those of you who haven't been here last year or didn't get the virtual staffing part or so I'll do a quick recap, and then I'll jump into the AI. So on the first session, we had how the law practice can actually scale the practice using virtual staffing. Virtual trained, dedicated PI trained staff. It ranges anywhere from an intake staff to case managers, paralegals, and even remote attorneys who can do motions, demands, and case preparations for trial. So anybody who hasn't jumped into that, by the way, let's see how many people in the audience have virtual staffing. It seems like a number, but it could be much greater, because that's the first challenge of a law practice, is to be able to find qualified, trained staffing that is affordable and they stay around. So that was the first challenge. The second challenge was not having to deal with so many different services and to scale the marketing side of the practice, which is client generation, lead generation, organic marketing, SEO, websites, God knows, newsletters, SMS marketing, email marketing. So what we did in LegalSoft, we combined all of that into one platform. So you're only dealing with one platform and one vendor to manage your entire marketing program, from paid ads to website maintenance. And this is also becomes scalable, because when you're dealing with 7 or 8 different vendors who are not all on the same page, it makes it expensive and unmanageable. So now we took care of the staffing, and we took care of the marketing, client generation, client retention, and all of that. The next thing that came really quick is the AI. So the impact of AI in a law practice in general going to be very major, especially with some of the recent things that you hear about, how they can actually interact with, you can't even tell that they're a real person or not. That's going to be huge, and it's moving so rapidly. I come from 20 years of Silicon Valley tech industry, and I've seen things like when we came out with the internet, or when we came out with the .com era. And it was pretty challenging. Nobody would have thought they can buy everything online, and they're not going to go to the traditional stores. And it took off like crazy. This AI is going 10 times faster than that. We can't even, on the tech side, we have something like 20 AI developers in LegalSoft. We can't even keep up with 1/10 of it. That's how fast it's going. And you've seen it in the media, you've seen it in the news. The ChatGPT 4.0 just came out that basically they say it's going to replace 20-30% of the customer service and sales jobs kind of immediately. The client generation, the AI. This is one of the first things that major marketeers in all kinds of industries going to take advantage, because you always want that very extensive, experienced marketing lead generation teams to work for you. What do they have? Data, all the campaigns that was run in the past, all method of campaigns, videos, animation, graphics, and so forth. Then the history of the performance of each of those, and in different markets, different demographic, This is what essentially makes, and creativity, makes a great marketing team. And nobody can have enough marketing data. AI is going to have like 100 times more than any marketing organization on earth because they have access to the data, history, performance, cost of the leads, cost of client acquisitions, conversion rates. They know it instantly. So that's going to make a major impact where you don't essentially hire marketing people or marketing companies. You subscribe to some sort of an AI marketing tool that you're going to put your requirements, your demographic, your targets, and all of that, and it's going to basically write you a whole description of what you need to do with how, with who, where, how much. So it's like spits up the entire recipe that would typically take a marketing of like 50 people to do the same thing. So what we're doing in the LegalSoft also is that we are starting to set up a process, which is I call it the PI.ai, because the PI is our focus. So we're starting from creating AI platform that is in one platform. Again, is very important to use a single platform for all of these activities. Otherwise, you're subscribing to 25 different services and platforms and companies trying to get this thing done. So what we decided to do is just extend our virtual staffing and the marketing solution, combine it with AI. So our virtual staff also going to be AI trained, which is a big thing considering how fast this thing goes. So now we are training them on things like how to use Clio, Filevine, Lidify. Now we have to train them on AI. So how do they use all of these AI platforms so they become more efficient and more effective, and they don't have to basically say, I don't know how to use this, which is the last thing you want to hear from your staff, is I don't know how to do this. The lead generation, case generation AI is your first step. Client intake. The first thing that we saw within the LegalSoft virtual staffing was the intake team, which a lot of firms never had a 24/7 dedicated legal intake staff who know how to retain clients and don't hang up the phone, and also call and text all your leads to be able to convert them. We fixed that. They were using combination of a staff in-house, 9 to 5, we have somebody in the office, and after that have a call center. Call centers, they're the thing of the past. I would never trust my 6-7-figure call to be answered by some random person in some random place with no incentives to retain that client for me. So if anybody is still depending on answering service, you'll be better to put it on the voicemail. You'll probably get a better response. So after that became having bilingual 24/7 intake staff that are incentivized to retain clients. And that's the visual staffing solution that we put in place about 4 or 5 years ago. So we have law firms anywhere from having 2 or 3 intake people. I have a law firm in LA, PI and Lemon Law, that they have 49 full-time virtual intake staff. They retain about 700 cases a month, but that's the team. They never miss a client. Now those intake staff have to utilize AI to be more efficient and don't have to work extended hours, and that's where the AI comes in. The AI intake that is available right now is not so visual, but imagine you're calling an office, it immediately recognizes the accent and the language and adjusts immediately. So basically you have an intake staff who speak 50 languages. And then they can also have all the possible answers and be sympathetic to the caller, adjust properly, and also know where to escalate. So when they think that the conversation is disengaging and is not moving forward, they can immediately escalate it to a real intake staff and have them continue. But imagine 40-50% of the workload goes away by just the intake staff. Multilingual, very sensitive to the situation, very sympathetic, they understand the concept behind the injuries. They ask them if you went to the emergency room already, did you collect all the information, and they do all of that. So that's the intake. By the way, this whole scenario that I'm laying out like a virtual staffing that would take a year or two to do. This AI, until it's real and is fully functional within the industry, it's going to take you about 2-3 years from now to be fully implemented. Because the stuff that you see on media, and you see they have a full conversation, doesn't matter what the topic, they're both engaged, it doesn't come raw. Every AI platform needs massive amount of data to be trained so they can have the right answers and right reactions. But what you see on the media is a pre-trained AI system. That doesn't mean it works for employment law or personal injury or immigration. They all need to be trained. That's what gives legal software leverage, because we work with 1,000 law firms, so we have that data set already. So not only we can use it for our AI development, we can use it for our visual staffing development. I love bullets, so that's my slides are pretty simple. It's just a bullet line, because I just like to talk about things and not read it off the screen. So the demand writing, one of the first things on the AI that popped up, especially on the PI, because when you're doing minimum policy demands, it's pretty straightforward. Even some people like to make it complicated, but it's really not that complicated. When you're doing a policy limits or minimum policies, or soft tissues and so forth, it's pretty straightforward demands. So now we have a demand writing that it was originally half AI and half supervised by local staff, or either attorneys or paralegals with extensive PI experience. Starting in 2 weeks, it's going to be like 95% AI and 5% supervision, because everything still needs to be supervised by experienced individual. So we just launched that. Imagine you can get 50, 100 demands out in the day that cost less than $100. And it has been reviewed, and you have a chance to also edit it, add comments or whatever. It reads all the medical records. It understands the injuries, future loss of income, all of that in a single demand that came out basically in like 5 minutes and cost less than $100. So that's already done. It's just a matter of making it more and more accurate and pushing it to litigation. Because litigation demands, as you all know, is more complex, more complicated, a lot more money on the table. So it needs a lot more training and needs a lot more editing when it gets to that point. But right now, for all the pre-lead demands, you basically just push this medical records here and the client information that comes out of your Clio, Filevine, Lidify, anything like that. And 5 minutes later, you have a written demand with all the medical records included. So that's on the demand side. And that's I would have, if I had to do it over again, I would have literally started from what I said, AI lead generation, then AI intake, the AI case management, and then demand. But somebody beat us to it, so it came right in the middle of the process and did the demand writing, so we had to sort of keep up with it. But otherwise, the process of the AI goes client generation, which is marketing, lead generation, client retention, referrals, then goes intake, then goes case management. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the case management process for PI, especially pre-lead. It's pretty straightforward. You're collecting the information, you're finding out every medical provider that works on lean, but we have that system too. We can identify nationwide medical providers that work on lean. So you just put in your client's zip code, and our system spits out everything from MRI to X-ray, folks to pain management, ortho, chiro, everything. So once you get that, the AI basically goes and makes the appointment for the client that is most convenient to the client. Notifies the facility that here's the patient information, and this is the first appointments that we have already done for them, and then follows up, makes sure the AI does all of this. Follows up and makes sure they actually show up, they do the follow-ups, then they go back and collect the medical record from the same medical providers that they send the client to. So this is now sort of a pre-lead case management AI. Then you're going into the demand writing and so forth. And then right after that is basically, once you collect a medical record and you have an offer and settlement, you're basically now doing the lien reduction, which is another future AI work to be able to do the lien reductions. Because this is essentially you making an offer to all the medical providers. Your bill is $10,000, but based on the settlement, we can only render you $2,500, whatever. So, and then it would escalate. If the lien reduction doesn't happen, then we'll escalate it to the case manager or paralegal or attorney to be able to work it out. One of the issues when they are onboarding a new staff into the firms is to be able to teach the case manager or even associates and so forth, what is the case value? Again, based on historical data. So you don't leave money on the table. Sometimes when you work with so many law firms so closely, you find out some really unpleasant information, which you find out the exact case that comes in with the same injuries and the same policy goes to this law firm, and their average settlement is for pre-lead $18,500, and this other firm gets $34,000. Same exact case, because they don't initially understand the true value of the case based on historical information, which is hundreds, if not thousands, of same case with the same type of injuries, with the same kind of policies. So if you have that, it's like the stock market when you're looking at the Teslas, you want to buy Tesla stock or not, you look at the whole 2 years history of all the ups and downs, and then you say, this is the right price line. And that's what brokers do. But in the PI firms, they kind of wing it. It's sort of a gut feeling. I think this is a six-figure case. And then they try to train an associate or a case manager to have the same gut feeling. And then they have these surprises. Oh, I thought this case was only like a $50,000 case. How did you get 125? So when you're using the AI, which has all of this history and can recommend you basically putting a value into that case and say, if you do this right, this case, based on historical information, should be $145,000 settlement. So you know what your target is to go after. Like in pre-lead, everybody has a target. I want to get policy because the injuries are much higher, the policy is low, so the gut feeling is pretty okay. But when you get into more complicated cases, you need to know exactly how much other amazing firms been able to get as a settlement based on the same set of injuries. And that's, again, the AI is going to do that. I want to open up to some of the questions because AI is very complicated, and I don't think the media has done a good job of educating the public about how does this thing really works. They just see how amazing it is, but they don't know what really goes in the background. So a lot of people have wrong expectation of what the AI should do and when they should use it. And because of the fast growth and the capital market, a lot of places just added the AI to their name or to their presentation or whatever, and they call it the AI. I mean, we sort of dig into some of these AI offerings, and it's like, we call it the wrap in the tech industry. It's just a wrap. Basically, they had already something, they put a ChatGPT in the front of it and call it, now we're all AI. But it's really not doing anything other than the ChatGPT. And they're just making it nicer, formatting it differently and such. So you have to be very selective. But if in your own process of scaling the practice, if you're not doing the stuff that I was just talking about from the beginning, having one platform that can help you, just like when you go buy a Clio or Filevine, you don't go get 5 different case management software. You want to log into one place. You want to deal with one vendor, one set of training. You don't want to be logging into a lot of different places, and then you can't combine the information. You cannot analyze the information. So you have to have that kind of a dashboard where you are able to analyze all your practice data. So some of this practice data that is we implement into the firms is to understand exactly where your cases are coming from. What platform, what ad spend, what's your conversion rate, what's your cost of client acquisitions, what's your retention rate. This is a dashboard that you use to run a practice. And then on the second side, what's the average number of cases I have per case manager? What is their average settlement? Because you have one case manager whose average settlement is 40% less than the other two. or there's something wrong. But if you don't see everything numerically and analytically, you can't make changes, you can't modify, you can't fix anything. So having that dashboard, and now all the tools in the industry is enabling you to have those dashboards to be able to understand exactly where your clients are coming from, how long it takes to settle a case in average. Like in the PI in California, the average cost of the case is about $3,400, which is very high. And average time to settle right now is 11 months for pre-lit, which is long. It's supposed to be 6 months or less. And the average settlements are very low because the minimum policy is 1530s. So if you don't know all of that and you're spending $3,000 or $4,000 gaining a client that 60% of them are minimum policies, which is 1530s, so you get $5,000 net attorney's fees, you spend already $3,500 of it upfront to get it. So every case that you get, you're basically losing $3,000. And then what balances things out, which makes a lot of PI attorneys happy, damn, I got one of those 7-figure cases, but you don't get to keep it because you're spending it on all these other ones that you're losing $2,000 or $3,000 on. This is California, but every state has its own price range of what's the cost of case acquisition, and we analyze that with the clients to understand, or make them understand that what's profitable, what's not profitable. So one thing that happened in California, there's a large firm that signs up about PI, about 800 to 900 PI cases a month. And it's a big operation. So what they did when they found out these numbers through the dashboard, they completely changed the business model. So everything that is minimum policy, they refer out for 40% referral fee. So at the very least, they recover the cost of case acquisition. So instead of trying to make a much bigger firm and lose money on all of these pre-lit minimum policies, we show them the way to refer all of those out for the attorneys who are solo and they don't have such a high cost and they love to get any type of a case. So they have 36 small law firms that they refer all of these cases to, and they get 40% of the net attorney's fees, which is allowed in California. I know like in Florida you can't do more than 25, but so now this whole wave of client referrals are in place. And they have referral managers, they sign up any case because they know somebody's gonna work on it and somebody's gonna make some money out of it. And they manage the capacity of the firm this way. So they get to focus on the high value cases. But all of this is possible by data. If you don't know your data, you can't make right decisions. It's almost like you have multiple credit cards, you don't know your limits on the cards, and you don't know your balance in the bank, and you're just spending because you don't know your number. That never happens, but the practice is the exact same thing. You got to understand how long it takes to close cases, how much did I buy it for, how much did it cost me to handle it, and what was my net attorney's fees in average between like 100 cases at a time. So those are the dashboard systems that are in place now for a lot of these practices to be able to manage the business of law. I'm not talking about managing the practice of law, and you get to do that basically on the high-value cases anyway. On the minimum policies, soft tissue stuff, it doesn't matter that much. Those are the systems, and some of the firms, Morgan & Morgan, you guys all know, it just shifted its entire business operation to do referrals only. So they built something like 60 people, 60 attorneys network within the organization who only manages referral networks. So they refer out and they refer in. And now it's a system which a lot of the firms essentially subscribe to. So what they do, they come to you and says, look, give me every lead in a case you don't want. Right out the back. Anything you don't want, I take. And they sign them all up because they got a pretty good system in place to be able to sign up, take a chance on it. If it's not good, drop them, which is a lot of the firms have problem with dropping cases. These guys don't. It's like, I just signed 2,000 cases, I dropped 1,000. Doesn't matter. But they turned it into a complete new business model, which I have several firms that I work with subscribe to it, so they're giving them hundreds of leads and cases, and they all turn into money. Otherwise, they would just go to waste. So there's a lot of evolutions around this PI industry that if you don't get into it, then you're going to be left behind, especially with the new force coming in. I don't know if many people know about this program called the ABS program. ABS program is right now in 4 states, Arizona, Utah, Washington, D.C., and one more state, that allows a non-attorney to own an entire law firm, which is kind of revolutionary when you don't need to be an attorney and own it. It has its restrictions. You have to have an ethics attorney on board full-time. You need to have a licensed attorney as an employee. Then you can own it. I actually was one of the first ones who got that privilege of owning a law firm, which not being an attorney, which I just sort of did it for the sake of it because I had no intention of practicing anything. But that's what it does now, which is, I said, in 2026, even in states like California and New York are considering allowing the ABS program, which basically means you're going to have Amazon PI and you're going to have Facebook PI. They're all getting into PI. And they're becoming law firms, essentially. And their target attorneys' fees for them that they're targeting right now to the launching of this thing is 19%. So imagine you get Amazon as a competition, and they're offering your client 19% referral fees. I mean, not referral fees, attorney's fees. That changes everything. And they have unlimited budgets, unlimited funds, unlimited reach. So that's what I said for the PI firms, they need to evolution their practice and change things and get very modernized, lower your expenses as much as possible. Your highest expenses is human resources, but having them, maintaining them, benefits and so forth, automations, know your dashboards with the data that you need to monitor and track, because the next wave of this ABS law firm, when I went to Arizona to do this ABS program, you go in front of a Arizona Supreme Court, whatever, 12 judges, and then you tell them why the hell you want to do this for. And it's kind of, they have guidelines. I was one of the 12 for that day to be interviewed, and the other 11 were all business venture folks from big companies who came there to do the same thing. They were not lawyers. They were all basically wanting to do a business of law and then hire lawyers to work for them or do this referral thing, which is not a big thing. So there's so many things in the horizon about personal injury. Another big item that we expanded a lot on nationwide on the PI, the biggest limitation was always, I'm licensed in Louisiana, so I can practice in Louisiana. Well, that's not the thing either anymore, because you have UBE attorneys, which is Universal Bar Exam, which once you take is implemented in 42 states. So once you pass, let's say, a bar in Arizona, or Washington, or Tennessee, it qualifies you as being applicant for 42 other states to get licensed in, not motioned in. You'll be licensed in 42 states if you want to. $1,500 application fee, 6 months is typically the wait time to get basically approved, and all they need to do is background check. There's no test, there is no bar exam, there's nothing. So you could literally, if you want to, and have the time for it, to be licensed to handle cases in 42 states. But keeping up with all of this stuff is what I'm emphasizing on, to make sure everybody is aware of what's coming and what's from AI to virtual to the big boys getting into the PI firms, being able to practice in multiple states, even if you're referring them out. These are all the things that everybody's sort of got to be aware of moving forward, and not being in this PI bubble, I call it, that I'm licensed here, I'm going to do this, I'm thinking about the billboard and SEO and, the stuff that was many years ago. Everything is moving very rapidly. All those things are sort of going to be obsolete pretty quickly. So that's what I got. I want to open up some questions. Anybody has any questions? I know I covered a lot of different spectrum of information. And this is everything that, at the LegalSoft, we have 2 booths outside. If you guys want to stop by and talk to more detail, we'll be happy to do that. But you need to be a one-stop shop for all of these things that has to do with running and scaling a law practice. It's not 1 or 2 things anymore. My website, my SEO, my ad campaign, my case manager, my intake is much bigger picture now. Any questions? Okay, I think we're good.